And what do you think the community of Tucson can do to ensure that the base stays open?
Well, in the short term, I would like to see support for the A-10 and support for the base. And by the way, I forgot to mention one other activity I know you're aware of, but I continue to be incredibly impressed by it as I travel, and that's the F-16 training at Tucson International. We've trained pilots from some 26 countries there. There's 15 Iraqi pilots right there now as we speak. But I was in Norway and I met a bunch of the pilots that were trained here. They loved it here. If I lived in Norway, I would love it here too. I've met the UAE pilots. I met a group of them in Bagram in Afghanistan. They said they loved it here. I mean, it's amazing the goodwill that has generated in militaries all over the world that have done their F-16 training here. I think some 26 countries have trained here. I think that's also a very important mission that we should really do everything we can to maintain.
So what about the F-35?
I don't see the F-35 being based here, at least anytime soon, because we've got it down in Yuma for the Marines, and we have it up at Luke for the Air Force, and the training also is going to be at Luke Air Force Base. So I've heard of no Air Force plans to have the F-35 at DM.
Just to tack onto that question, you mentioned yesterday that you've seen success in terms of the expansion at Raytheon over by the TIA, which allows for a second runway to be built out at the TIA.
It's been one of the more difficult enterprises. It's taken 5 years, honestly, to finally get this in train. Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
But the F-16 is an aircraft that's also an older airframe. Could we see F-35s being trained out there for other military uses for other countries?
You know, I don't know the answer to that. I think that's an excellent question. But you see, the Guard people fly the F-16, and the Guard people don't fly the F-35. So, you know, I don't know the answer. In fact, I will ask the Air Force what their plans are, because, as you know, several countries have purchased the F-35. I'll get back to you on that. But it's an excellent question.
But at the same time, you brought up the fact that there might be missions at other bases that would be closed that could move to DM. In your mind, do you see DM as a pretty safe facility then?
I don't regard anything as real safe. If sequestration continues, which I am adamantly opposed to seeing it continue, there are going to be decisions made. In fact, I think this whole DM decision, the whole A-10 decision, and the whole missile decision, cutting $83 billion worth out of Raytheon, were driven not by any reason except they were trying to find funds that they could cut. A Tomahawk missile is one of the major weapon systems, and it takes 10 years to build a replacement for it, and yet they were willing to cut $82 million out of it right away. You know, so it's hard to predict, but in the short term, and I'm talking about years, I'm not talking about decades, but I'm talking about years, and not just one or two, I think that the A-10 has to be kept in operation because there is no adequate replacement for it. And it would take years to build that. And I can't see replacing an A-10 with a plane, the F-35, that costs 10 times as much. It just doesn't make any sense. Or they said they were going to use two replacements, one the B-1 bomber, and the other was with the F-35. And as you know, the F-35 has had more growing pains than most any weapon system in recent history, tragically.